Corrupt Authority by yours truly. There was a house of the neighborhood of Vermilion Port, which served as a social hall of half the local trainer population. Through the threshold, the scenery revealed a compact room filled with comfortable-looking sofas and a table in the middle. On the walls hung large pictures and paintings of happy-looking people with Pokemon, and on the floor sat actual-sized Pokemon dolls, consisting mostly of Clefairy. Just above the door, a cuckoo clock struck 7, and a little wooden Pidgey statue popped out and squawked at each knell. The elderly chairman in a suit called the meeting to order, but order didn't last long. Despite the passing of 4 months, the trainers affected by the G.R.I.P legislations were still smarting from the loss of Pokemon they had formed bonds with over the years. The president had merely to initiate a Pokemon of the Day discussion, and unless it was something decisively non-competitive, chances were someone would be triggered. Today's Pokemon was Dodrio, and as per usual, the discussion soon plunged into a meaningless tangent. "You remember my Dodrio? The one I named Chocobo? He was faster than any flying bird, and his tri-attack always gave an enemy some sort of status condition, and those bastards from G.R.I.P just took him like he was theirs. Dodrio is no great loss, you could always get another one in the Safari Zone, but my Jinx was irreplaceable. Hey, screw you! I don't care about getting another Dodrio. Chocobo was special. No one could ever replace him. I had an Arcanine. He knew extreme speed and flamethrower, and I bought him a Firestone and everything. Those good-for-nothings had no right to take him. Don't they have enough in their stupid K9 unit already? It's not fair that they, make us pick who we want to keep while making us give up the others. It's like forcing us to choose who would get saved out of a burning house. Like who matters more? Your father, mother, brother, or sister? That's just cruel. I couldn't keep any of my Pokemon. They were all classified as too strong. What the hell, man?" Outside the door, Kenta and Hibiki listened to the lamentations drifting through the window. Kenta shook his head and groaned. "Well, they've got the right attitude," he said bitterly, "but I don't know if I'd be able to take all this eternal bitching." "Hey, Moses had to deal with the Israelites for more than 80 years, said Hibiki half-jokingly. "You don't have it so bad." "Yeah, well, I'm not Moses." "You're going to have to be one." Hibiki put a hand on Kenta's shoulder, feeling it was his turn to support his older sibling. "Kenta, if this plan is to work, you need to be the strong Moses figure. You might not be able to talk with God face to face, but I'll be your Aaron." He patted his brother on the back, giving him the reassuring smile that Kenta so often put on for him. "Now get in there and perform a miracle." Kenta grinned weakly. "All right, fine," he said, standing up straighter. "But if you ask me to part the Vermilion Sea and lead those guys to Fuchsia City, I quit." "Moses wasn't actually the one to do that anyway," laughed Hibiki, pulling open the door for him. Kenta rolled his eyes and headed into the room first, and Hibiki followed, pulling the door shut behind him. Nobody took notice of the two newcomers, since all of them were completely preoccupied with talking about the Pokemon they didn't have anymore. Kenta listened to a couple more kids talk about their lost Nidoqueen and Alakazam, then put aside his patience and brought a finger to his mouth. He whistled loudly, shrilly, in such a sharp pitch that it brought a complete hush on the club in a matter of seconds. All eyes turned on him, and Kenta steeled himself for his upcoming speech. "Don't be afraid. Just call them out for what they are. You've got to make them angry." "Look at yourselves." Kenta gazed around the room, at the surprised and skeptical faces that stared back at him. "Your once proud Pokemon teams are all but gone, and the best you can do is squeeze together into a stuffy room and gripe about it? I mean, come on, really? This isn't going to change anything, you know. Which of you has gotten back so much as a Weedle for his bitching and moaning?" The trainers of the fan club continued to stare at him. Their deer-in-the-headlights looks came across to Kenta as extremely stupid, and he forgot his stage fright completely as genuine anger took him. "And why do you all look so shocked right now?" he demanded. "Have I said something strange? I can't believe how weak you all are. The Pokemon you've cherished your whole life are taken away from every one of you in one night, and you aren't attempting to fight back. Not even by civil disobedience. You say you care about them, but you obviously don't care that much. You guys make me sick. It's fitting, really. You don't deserve the Pokemon you've lost anyway." "Who the friggin' hell do you think you are?" challenged a teenage boy towards the back right-hand side of the room. "You're not Brendan Birch just 'cause you're dressed up like him. Yeah, chimed in another girl, standing up angrily. What we do is none of our business, you fake, so just turn around and get out of here. That's right. You have no idea how we feel. Hibiki felt himself trembling slightly. He had encouraged Kenta into this, but things were quickly turning ugly. Suddenly, he had a powerful urge to retreat, to leave this spot of burning discomfort and go back out into the cool evening air where it was quiet. This sort of pressure and abuse was too much for him. So, I have no idea how you feel, huh? Kenta returned, his voice booming deeper and stronger than Hibiki had ever heard before. He was holding up Bolt's friend ball, and his eyes glistened with the light of battle. You think I don't know? Then here's what I propose. Everyone who wants me to leave, battle me out. Prove me wrong. If all the Pokemon you still have are stronger than the single Pokemon I have, then I'll go in shame. But if we win, then I get to declare exactly how you feel, and you'll realize I'm right. The fan club immediately burst into challenging calls of, Fine! Let's go outside! This freak's mine! And a great deal of booing. Hibiki hurried to pull the door open again, and Kenta backed out, pulling Hibiki with him. The two brothers hurried to the other side of the street, and turned with their backs facing the sea. The fan club trainers piled out of their house, and stood opposite to Kenta and Hibiki, pulling out their Pokeballs in rapid succession. Shouts of summoning filled the air, and in burst after burst of blinding white light, the trainers' Pokemon appeared until they had formed a solid wall. Hibiki eyed the opposing force. A Venomoth, 3 Jigglypuff, a Nidorino and a Nidoking, a Farfetch'd, 2 Poliwag, a Poliwhirl, 2 Pidgeotto, a Mr. Mime, 2 Raticate, a Rapidash, a Fearow, 3 Geodude, 2 Zubat, 2 Voltorb, a Vulpix, a Machop, 2 Gloom, a Clefairy, and 2 Pikachu. He couldn't even clearly see the Pokemon behind the front lineup, but he was fairly certain that there were at least 2 more waves after the first. Hibiki looked at Kenta. His brother appeared faint from the sight. Kenta? He asked timidly, holding up his Master Ball. I can help you if you'd like. If we double battle them, do you think we might win? Kenta shook his head, putting a hand over his eyes. Hibiki wasn't sure he'd even heard him. Man, these Pokemon, he muttered weakly, suck! Hibiki stared at him. They suck? He repeated, wondering if Kenta was serious. Kenta tossed his friend ball, still shaking his head. Yeesh, this feels like a waste. But desperate times, you know the rest. Bolt's gigantic Salamence body materialized between the Nina brothers and their wall of opponents, and as he thudded to the ground, the entire front line cowered back a step. The fan club trainers gave yells of exclamation and disbelief, and Kenta pointed at the scattered first wave of opponents with a disgusted face. You see, Hibiki, he said, Intimidate is one of the best abilities a Pokemon can have. Any physical opponents severely drop and their status is a threat. The problem is, when they're not a threat to begin with, it's just embarrassing to watch. Hibiki could not stop himself from gawking at Kenta. Even for him, this was over the top. Hibiki understood that he was playing the part of the mean guy to be taken seriously, but there were limits to be considered. Whether it was true or not that the enemies were weak, their feelings had to be considered as well. But now wasn't the time to tell Kenta. He was in his battle state, and the last thing Hibiki wanted to do was distract him. Give them the first move, Bolt, Kenta commanded. But use Protect. You've taken enough hits today already. Hey! Shouted one of the fangirls indignantly from the crowd. That Pokemon isn't allowed to be used anymore! Then take him from me if you can, responded Kenta in his resolute voice. I've kept him out of Grip's filthy hands until now. I'll keep him out of yours. We'll see about that, snarled a young man, whose age appeared to be just around 18. Break through its defenses, Nidoking! Thrash attack! His command paved the way for his colleagues, and every fan club trainer of the front lines followed with shouts of their own. Flurries of leaves, blasts of fire, bursts of water pressure, pillars of lightning, and beams of psychic force all shot at Bolt at once, along with every sort of horn, talon, fist, beak, claw, and sharp fang imaginable. The Salamence was covered as all the attacks landed at once, and a cloud of smoke burst out from the scene. Hibiki held on tight to his hood as the air pressure blasted outwards from the impact, wondering frantically how anyone could hope to survive such an outburst. Kenta, meanwhile, stood his ground, his arms crossed, his eyes observing the scenery as the smoke cleared. Bolt was unscathed, his wings wrapped around his whole body but the tail, surrounded by a protective emerald-colored aura. As he unfurled his body, the aura vanished from sight, and he bellowed a ferocious roar at his legion of attackers. Lying around him were 2 fallen Pidgeotto, 2 Jigglypuff, and a Poliwag. Kenta pointed at them, retaining his strong voice so nobody would miss his words. "Look at that!" he exclaimed angrily. "We haven't even returned fire yet, and your own Pokemon are hitting each other with their attacks. What if I were a real threat? The lot of you would be done for." "Don't act all high and mighty just because you avoided damage for 1 turn, snapped the one girl from earlier. "Any Pokemon can learn Protect. You're just stalling your defeat." "Am I?" Kenta narrowed his eyes, irked at his opponent's ignorance. "Then defeat us with the Pokemon who can still battle after this move." He pointed at the crowd of fan club Pokemon still lined up in fighting poses. "Ground them, Bolt! Earthquake!" Hibiki knew what came next. He bent his knees as Bolt shot up into the sky, preparing to leap. As soon as the Salamence began his comet dive, Hibiki jumped as high as he could, and not a moment too soon. Bolt's torso smashed the ground with all the force of a fallen jumbo jet, and the quake rattled every house within seeing eye distance. A few windows shattered, and a couple of unfortunate fishermen on distant docks were thrown straight into the water. On the battlefield, not one ground Pokemon remained standing. Hibiki climbed to his feet and subconsciously inventoried the enemy Pokemon still available. Remaining on the fan club side flew 2 Butterfree, a Farfetch'd, a Fearow, 2 Spearow, a Venomoth, a Beedrill, and 2 Zubat. Other than them, the vast majority was down for the count. The Vermilion fan club stood surprisingly silent now, standing and staring at their fainted Pokemon, all beaten by a single devastating move. Kenta waited a few seconds for the reality to sink in, then spoke once more, hoping to God that he wasn't making the wrong decision. "I'm guessing you guys had somewhere between 70 to 90 Pokemon before this," he declared, less harshly than before. "Do you want to keep going with your last 10, or are you ready to quit?" Hibiki watched the fans intently, wondering what they would do. Never in his life had he ever experienced anything so extreme, and even the morning's battle between Bolt and the Tyranitar seemed tame in comparison to taking down almost an entire city's club of trainers. The members of Vermilion Fan Club were staring at Kenta and his Salamence with a new expression written on their faces. There was little indignation amongst them now, let alone hatred. Certainly there was no more pride. Now there was only fear, awe, realization at last that they were facing a trainer several leagues above them. The club's chairman stepped forward meekly, removed his hat with one hand while waving down his remaining few Pokemon trainers with the other. He bowed his head, not looking either of the Nina brothers in the eye. "I'm sorry," the old man spoke, keeping his eyes on the ground. "None of us had any idea what you were capable of. No more fighting, please?" Kenta let out a long whoosh of breath and gave the chairman a relieved smile. "I never intended to fight you in the first place," he said, walking up to Bolt and rubbing his scaly head. "I'd only ever wanted to talk." The chairman motioned to his club's house. "Then by all means, let's go back inside. Perhaps we can start over?" "I'd like that. Sorry about your windows. I'll pay for them soon, I promise."